Moreover, at a rally in that, refusing to say what that is and conveniently forgetting they didn't do it Tuesday night. Moreover, at a rally in Minnesota overnight, the president used language that will thrill white supremacists, warning that that state could turn into a refugee camp, the language of invasion, and hurling a racist attack against a member of Congress from Minnesota. There's also new debate fallout this morning. The Bipartisan Debate Commission is planning changes for the final two debates that could include a mute button to prevent interruptions.
Oh, I wish I had one of those.
For me?
For anybody. Anybody, not you, of course. I mean, just some of our guests.
Okay. Exactly. You said that out loud, and they can hear you.
It does seem useful. All right, meanwhile, coronavirus, it continues to surge across the country. 27 states seeing an increase in cases this morning. Nearly 1,000 more Americans died just yesterday. Wisconsin is seeing a sharp rise in new cases. The state posted single-day records for hospitalizations and deaths on Wednesday. Despite those numbers, President Trump is planning to hold 2 campaign rallies in Wisconsin this weekend. But let's begin with the debate fallout. Joining us now, we have CNN contributor Scott Jennings. He's a former special assistant to President George W. Bush, CNN political commentator under President Bill Clinton. Great to see all of you guys this morning. Let's just start there, Scott, with the fallout from the debate. And I mean the fallout for Republicans. It seems like the cleanup on aisle 8 on Capitol Hill is falling to Republican senators. Let me just play some of them who were forced to explain President Trump's lack of denouncement for white supremacists.
I think he misspoke. I think he should correct it. If he doesn't correct it, I guess he didn't misspeak.
I want to associate myself with the remarks of Senator Tim Scott. He said it was unacceptable not to condemn white supremacists. And so I do so in the strongest possible way.
Should the president condemn white supremacy?
Absolutely.
What was it, a mistake for him to leave that hanging out there?
Yes.
He should unequivocally condemn white supremacy.
Scott, do you worry this morning that the president's comments will come back to haunt some of those Republicans at the polls?
Well, I mean, look, they all said the right thing yesterday, but by the way, it's not a hard question to answer. I mean, you know, if somebody asks you, do you condemn white supremacy? You say, yes, I condemn it in the strongest possible terms. And that's exactly what you heard out of all the Republican senators. So, I mean, if you want to be fair about it, Donald Trump had a bad moment in that debate. He made a huge mistake. These Republicans said exactly the right thing, exactly what you would expect them and want them to say. And so I would just say to voters who were thinking about it, you have to treat people by their own words. And these Republicans, I think, got it right.
Are you drawing a distinction, Scott, between the president and Republicans who are running for office again and Republicans in the Senate? Because that seems to be what's happening now.
Well, I think in October of an election year, everybody's accountable for their own words. Donald Trump's accountable for his words in the debate. These Republican senators are accountable for their words on Capitol Hill and when they're campaigning. And I think when we have weighty issues like this that require clear, concise, precise language, and people give it to you, folks ought to take notice of that.
It wasn't just the debate, Dan. President Trump had another opportunity yesterday, and you saw that moment. We just played it. It was so interesting to see the wheels turning. He said, I've always denounced. He's searching for some sort of word that he can use that isn't white supremacy. He says, any of that. He can't say it.
You know, this is a real, I think, problem. It's not just a problem, you know, the way we talk about it, oh, you know, politically, you know, you should have done this, you should have done that, you know. The problem is that people are watching. We have a massive terrorist movement in the country. Massive. The biggest terrorist movement in the country is this white supremacist movement. It's violent, it's killed people, it continues to kill people. And we've got to be able to confront it head on. The fact that the President of the United States continues to kind of wink and nod at it is very dangerous.
And Joe, if you can bear with me 1 second, because Van, I want to get your take on something else here, which is not only did the president say that at the White House, but then at a rally in Minnesota, he used language that seems very carefully chosen. It's the language that is relatable to white supremacists. He's talking about Ilhan Omar, who is often attacked by Republicans. And there are political ways to state your disagreements here. You can call her a liberal, which she is. You can talk about her positions. But he attacked the idea of refugee camps in Minnesota, which is the language of invasion. And then he says this, listen.
What is going on with Omar? I've been reading these reports for 2 years about how corrupt and crooked she is. Let's get with it. Let's get with it. How the hell? Then she tells us how to run our country. Can you believe it? How the hell did Minnesota elect her? What the hell is wrong with you people?
And it's the run our country language, Van, that language of other, which is something that is very much a part of the lexicon of these white supremacist groups.
You know, he's got to stop doing that. And Republicans have to go, listen, it's one thing for Republicans to condemn white supremacy, which they should. This is the party of Lincoln, after all. That should be pretty much a no-brainer. At some point, you've got to start being more direct in condemning the president for doing stuff like this. Listen, you don't have to like Ilhan Omar. You don't have to like anything that she's ever done. But she is an American citizen. E pluribus unum, okay? Out of many one. She's an American citizen. It's not our country versus some, foreigner, outsider, whatever. Once you're a citizen, you're a citizen. That was true for Trump's ancestors. It should be true for the present generation. Once you start putting that kind of stuff out there, people are watching. Somebody will come from that rally or see that. We don't know. They may see a woman in a hijab and they may say something. They may feel a certain way. They may mistreat that person. They may hurt that person. And you've got to watch your language. You've got to be careful. You've got to take responsibility. You're giving aid and comfort and encouragement to a terrorist organization, a terrorist movement in the United States. For some reason, we say white or racist, then people go to their corners. This is the biggest terrorist movement in the United States. The president of the United States is giving aid and comfort to that movement by what he's saying, by what he's not saying. At a certain point, the Republican Party, not just senators, saving their own seats, have to stand up and say, we don't want that happening in the Republican Party.
It's already happening. I mean, it's already happening, Joe, in terms of, we don't have to hope that it's not, that nobody's going to act on it in the future. They have acted on it in the past. In fact, that was the point that Elizabeth Newman was making. She was the Assistant Secretary of Counterterrorism in President Trump's administration. She's now no longer in there. She had this whole Twitter thread that she already has seen evidence of the president's rhetoric translating to real violence in the country from people who were activated by it. What she wrote was, I concluded after the attacks in El Paso that the president of the United States was complicit in the deaths of Americans for his refusal to recognize his language was in the shooter's manifesto. Tonight he was given the opportunity to condemn white supremacy. He refused. That's, of course, she's referring to a mass shooting in our country.
Yeah, listen, I think Van and Scott are right and in denouncing that kind of language. So I want to come at this from a political strategy point of view. The president in the debate needed to change the dynamic of the race. He needed to focus it more on Joe Biden and make it a referendum on Biden. Make it about Joe Biden being a wild socialist and Marxist and tax hiker and weak on China. He didn't do that. What he did was he made it about himself. And he cannot win if this election is a referendum on him. He needs to make it about Biden to get those last undecideds to put him over the top. So it was not only a missed opportunity for him, politically it was a disaster because not only did he not change the dynamic, he cemented the dynamic. He reinforced what all of his people think, but much more importantly, what the other 60% of the country thinks. And that is very hard to see him coming back with 30 days left. I mean, we'll see what he does in the debates, but he's in a very weak position right now.
30 days is 30,000 lifetimes. So who knows at this point? We've been through a lot before. I will say, Joe, it is notable if you watch some of the conservative stations, you see Republicans going on and pleading with the president for how to do things differently. I saw Ari Fleischer yesterday holding up a chart with big clear letters, I think, hoping that maybe the president was at least flicking through the stations so he could figure out a way to dig himself out. Joe, you've also talked extensively about the debates themselves at this point. The debate commission yesterday came out and said, we're going to change things. We have to change things. It was so bad what the president did. They didn't say that, although that's clearly why they're changing things, that they're going to change things, including maybe figuring out a way for the moderator to cut off the microphone of people. What do you think about these changes? What does it tell you? And what should the Biden campaign do with this?
Well, I think they have to make some changes, and I think the changes are relatively simple in the next debate because it's a town hall format, and that is a completely different dynamic than two guys, close up yelling at each other. There are some techniques as far as separating them, as far as separating the questioners and keeping people in an area. And then, as you say, turn off the mic when the other person's speaking. That's hard to do when they're right next to each other because you can hear the other person over the over their mic. The third debate is going to be the hard one. But what it says is that, once again, Trump has trampled on a norm. We always do these debates. They are relatively civil, but he proved on Tuesday that he can't do that. I actually think Biden's in this for good. I mean, he actually got something out of the debate and is very happy with it. I have a sneaking feeling that because the campaigns have to approve the changes that the commission does, that the president's team may say, oh, we're not going to do that, and then to launch a major campaign against, saying the commission and Biden and the media are all in league together against me as a way to whip up his troops, because they know the debate was a disaster, and they know they can't change Donald Trump. They just can't change who he is.
Scott, we're almost out of time. Do you think that both candidates will show up for the next two debates?
I mean, I think the odds favor it, but I wouldn't bet my, kids' college education funding on it. I mean, you start telling candidates we're going to mute your microphone, especially when one of them is the President of the United States. I can imagine the negative reaction they would have to that. So I think probably, but not a sure bet.
Allison threatened to mute all of your microphones. I don't know if you heard in the intro here. And she did not.
We can hear everything you say before we come on. We can hear it.
That's what I'm telling you.
Then I apologize in advance.
You know what you're saying about
I just accomplished more in 47 seconds than Joe Lockhart has accomplished in 47 years.
Gentlemen.
I am a raving socialist.
Oh my gosh. This is actually very entertaining. We could go on with this if they weren't wrapping us. Scott, Van, Joe, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
The head of the